Okay, people, a little something different today. I've done some tutorial videos on here of my own. Today, I'm going to walk through the code of a tutorial that I already did, someone else's tutorial. You may have heard of rubber duck decoding, where you speak about your code to your duck when you get stuck, your rubber duck or your whatever. And the act of talking out loud and explaining what's happening on the screen can help your either figure out what's going on, or in this case, if you already know what's going on and you just talk about it, it reinforces it for you. There's some quote that's like, and I'm making these numbers up, who knows? You remember 20% of what you learn and 80% of what you teach, or something like that. So the idea is that if you know it well enough to explain it, it shows that you really know it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So anyway, this was a free code camp video. It's just a basic to-do app, but it's instead of MERN, it's PERN with Postgres instead of Mongo. So here's my working version. It's obviously Bootstrap. Okay, so that being said, let's dig right into it. So I have my VS Code. It had a front end and a back end, a client and a server. I have server running on here with NodeMon, and I have the front end. Did I start the front end yet? Yes, I have the front end started in this terminal. Why did I do them in two different terminals? I don't know. That's just what I did when I started going. Anyway, so let's start looking at the back end. So in the server folder, it's an Express app, so it's going to start at index.js. If you weren't sure, you could check the package JSON, and here's the main index.js, right? So index.js. So what's this all mean? Const express equals require express. That means we need to bring in the express package. And then here, app equals express. That means we're going to refer to it as app anywhere in the code. Let's see. I should probably make this a little bigger, right? Yeah, that's probably good, right? Make you all be able to see it a little better. Okay, so we've got express. We're referring to it as app. We're bringing in the package cores because we're going to need that. And this const pool equals require dot/db. That means we're going to bring information in from this file. This is information about where our database lives. And so let's look at that. Pool equals require PG. So PG is the Postgres, right? Okay, so then pool equals, okay, so this is just tells you where it is. This is just on my local machine, so it's got my the default user and password, localhost, what port it's going to run on. In this case, we gave it which database it's going to be trying to look at, which we called PERN to do. No surprise there. Okay, no big deal. Very straightforward. So now the app knows what database we're going to try to use. Okay, so there's a little middleware. There's like I said, the cores for cross-site stuff, and then there is this is just so we can use the body of the forms, right? We can get information from the body and express it as JSON. Express it as JSON. Use it as JSON. Download it as JSON. You know what I mean? Okay. So here's the roots. Just like any Express app, you have now. I realize this is a simple one, and these would usually be set up in a different, file or folder with roots or whatever. But since this is so simple, we just did it all right in the index. Okay. I recognize this would not all be in one folder or one file, I should say. But again, simple enough that it's just all here. Okay, so let's take a look here at the roots. It has the post to do first, but let's skip that. Let's just talk about get all to dos first. So you have app, which means express, right? And we're doing the get. It means get the data, right? It means if you go to this route, your local host or your URL/to-dos, it's gonna get information basically. That's the HTTP verb there. So it's async, which means that hey, Node, we know this is gonna take a minute. Wait for us to get the data back, right? So this is typical Express stuff here, request and response object. So we have it all in a try-catch block to help deal with any kind of errors. So if there's an error, it's just going to send the error to the console, like console log, basically console error. Okay, but if it works, this is what it's going to try to do. Okay, first it's going to say we're going to, whatever comes back, we're going to save it in this this variable called all to dos. We need to say await because again we said it's asynchronous. We need to tell it. We told it here, hey, stuff is going to take time. Here's what you should wait for, basically. Okay. And so then pool.query, here's the query that we want to send to the database when we hit this route. It's saying go to the to-do database, right, and select everything from the to-do database. And then it's going to response in JSON format, all to do dot rows. Okay, so it should give a, I believe it sends, in this case, it's sending back an array of all the rows of data that we get back. And we will use that array to loop over in the front end. But let's take a look at this for now. So that's pretty straightforward. You're getting all the to-dos from the table when you hit this to-dos route, and it sends it back as JSON, basically. To get a single to-do, you need to know what the ID of that to-do is. When you create a to-do, it's going to automatically be assigned an ID. That happens in Postgres automatically because of the way we set up the database. So once we know what the ID is, you go to it's still a get to-dos, and then you put the ID. This colon ID means that this is going to be, take the ID, whatever is put in the route, if you want to say, so we don't get confused, route and routes, but it's in the route. Again, this is asynchronous, so we're going to have to wait for things. Again, it's got the same catch if any errors. So we're going to try is actually do, all right, we're going to set up a variable of ID from request.params. This request.params takes this information in the URL you would enter in the browser. It could be just the / in this case, but you could also have a named one, like if you see that in a URL sometime with a little question mark and equal, name equals whatever, that would be in here too. Since this is the only thing that's here, we're using this to get the ID off of this. This way we would refer to it as ID instead of request.params.id. If you do it this way, you could just say ID. It's called destructuring, object destructuring in this case. Okay, making another to-do that we will be able to use. This is the one this is the information we need to wait for. The query, select everything from the to-do just like before, but this time we're going to say not just everything, get all of those, but I only want the ones where the to-do equals this $1. And this $1 here means it's going to be a variable. Which variable it is going to be right here. Okay, let's do this. There we go. So the way you set this up, this could be a list of different variables, right? So this is saying get the first one out of this list. Since there's only one, it's ID. So so now it's just a way of not hard coding this, like, how are we going to know which one it is to query? Well, we're going to get it from the parameters that are typed in the URL. We're going to select all of them, but we're going to only select the ones where the ID equals whatever that ID from the URL was. Okay. Okay, cool. So we got how to get all of them and how to get a single one. Let's go back here and how to create one. So this is similar to the get one in terms of the shape of the URL. Post means we're not just getting stuff, it means we're sending information. Again, it's asynchronous, and we've got our error handling. Okay, so what we want to try to do, so here we go. This is that object destructuring again. We could refer to this as rec.body.description, but that's just more to type. We can just call it description if we do it this way. Rec.body means we're going to be getting data that's in the form that we have in the browser. That's a way to use the form data to send along, okay? or setting up here is another variable called this is going to be the to-do that we're actually going to send along. Again, await, this is the part where that's going to take time. Here's the query that we're actually going to send to the database. So we're going to say insert into to-do. It's pretty self-explanatory with these SQL commands, right? Where we want to put information into this database, the to-do database. And what information is going to be the field is description and values. Again, this is like what we had before with the using a variable instead of hard coding, right? So we're going to be putting the field that's called description that we get from the request body. And when it's done inserting in this value of the description into the to-do, it's going to return everything. In this case, it's the, I guess it's returning all the rows, okay? Okay, so we got that. Updated to do. So this is a little like getting the to do in terms of this format of the URL, but the HTTP verb is put this time, which just tells the server that it's going to be an update. So we're going to find which one we're going to talk about, or try to edit, I should say. Again, like before, this is going to be in the URL. It's going to be this ID. So then with this destruction, we're going to just refer to it as ID later. Same thing with description from the rec.body like we spoke about before. So this is we're going to save this information we do from our query in this update to do variable. Again, the await is where we're waiting for the information to come back. We know this is going to take time, so it has to await. Here's our SQL command, update. So it needs to know that we're working with an existing row, right? So update to do set description where to do ID equals number 2. Okay, so here, so again, this is where we're doing the not hard coding stuff. Description equals number 1. That's this description. Number 2 is this is the second thing in this little right here, right? So we're saying update from to do where the ID equals whatever this ID, right? Which we got from the parameter request.parameters, which comes from the URL. And what we're gonna set is this description, which we got from the request body. Okay. Delete to do, a little even more straightforward because we're just getting the ID in the same way we did before from the request.params, which is in the URL. And we're saying, well, here delete from to do where the to do ID equals this. So it's very simple. It's just saying, hey, find the one that has this ID and get rid of it, right? And it's going to response is going to be, it's just that let us know that the to do was deleted. What would we do up here? So the response back here was just so forgot to talk about that in the update one. Response was just letting you know that it was updated here. Just it's getting a response letting you know it's deleted. And that's it. That's the CRUD, right? The last thing here is just setting up the server in the first place. So that is that. This was just creating the sort of schema, I guess you call it, for the Postgres database, telling it that table is called to do. Database is called PERN to do. The specific table is called to do. It's going to have these columns, to do ID, which is going to be serial, which means that's where I was saying before it's going to automatically give it a new number every time. And this is going to be the primary key. So if we had other tables, we wanted to reference one table from another table, this is how you know which part of the table to use, right? And it's going to have, so this is ID, which is automatically given a number, and a description, which is going to be text, variable characters, I guess that's what that's shorthand for, with a limit of 255 characters. So it's going to be a text of the description of our to-do. Okay, so I think that's pretty much straightforward on the back end, and then on the front end, let's take a look at that. This is a React app. So the entry point of React app is going to be the index.js as well. Okay, I guess you technically don't have to do this anymore, the import React, but whatever. Just the basic stuff that was from Create React App, and they, like every other tutorial, React tutorial you've seen, they start with Create React App and rip out a bunch of stuff that's not needed for the tutorial, right? This is where the CSS file is. So this is the entry point, but then this is saying where the most of the code is in app, right? Okay. So let's look at app. This is where most stuff happens, okay. Again, it's a pretty simple thing. So the components that we have, let's take a look. Input to do and list to do. So the input to do is probably about from this add button, from this add button on up, and the list to do's is probably from this description on down, right? So let's take a look. This isn't supposed to be a whole React tutorial, so I'm assuming you understand components and, okay. So what are our components? We have input to do and list to do. So let's look at our components. List to do's, let's start with that. Let's go back to the top here, okay. We have use state and use effect, which are hooks from React that allow us to do certain things. Import edit to do from edit to do. So that's another component, as you see over here under components, and we'll get to that. So the first thing we're going to do here is, this is the use state. So we're calling this piece of state the list to do's equals this function, const to do, set to do's, use state. Okay, so it's saying we're starting with the state is an empty array. There's nothing in there, okay? Delete to do. Well, I'm not sure why that's first in here, but so let's skip that. Let's start with, all right, let's roll down a little bit here. The first thing is, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. All right. When the app first starts up, right, it's going to try to figure out what's the information that I have, what's in the state. The state is empty. Like we said here, it's going to start with this empty array. The first thing it's going to do, so it renders first time, and then it says, okay, I need to see what kind of effects are happening by use effect. And it says, oh, there is something here I need to do. I need to go get the to-dos. And this empty array here is telling it just do it the one time. Don't worry about if anything else changes. If you wanted to tell me what things to re-render on, you put them in here. Again, this is not a React hooks tutorial. I'm assuming you know that. So it's saying the first thing we're going to do is go run this function get to do's. So here's get to do's. Again, this is asynchronous, and we know it's going to take time, so that's why we have these await statements. Again, we have the try catch just like we did in the back end, just so it doesn't bomb, right? If there's a problem. So we're having two variables, response and JSON data. Okay, so the response is going to be doing a fetch to our backend route, right? So if there's no specified HTTP verb, it's just a get. So we're just getting the get to-dos, which if we recall, just went to the database and listed all the to-dos. So now we have a list of all the to-dos stored in this response variable. And this is saying, okay, now we have this, but it's not in a format that we necessarily can use. So we're going to change it and save it into a variable JSON data. And we're going to say that response.json, we're going to make it into JSON format. Okay. And then we're going to say set to do's. This is that use state. What are we going to set in there? We're going to set this JSON data that we just made, right? So now our state, instead of being an empty array, is going to be this list of to-dos. Okay, so now the app has this list of to-dos, and we want to display the list of to-dos. This was Bootstrap, right? So in the tutorial, basically had us just go to W3 Schools and copy the basic Bootstrap table and then we edit it from there. So this is some of the just standard Bootstrap styling stuff: text center, table, margin top 5, little room on the top. So it had basically your basic table. It's got table headings, and then here's where the React sort of magic starts happening. This was just part of the thing from the stuff we copied from W3 schools. I guess I just left that there so we could see what it was supposed to look like. So it's saying, okay, take those to-dos from the state, and we're going to map over them. And for every to-do, here's what we're going to do with it. We're going to make a table row that has some table data, right? And in that to-do, it should have, if you remember when we talked about the sort of schema in that database, it has an ID and a description every to-do. So the ID, since that's going to be unique, we can use that as our key whenever you're doing mapping over things in React. You have to have a key so it doesn't get confused on which thing was which element is which. So we know that's unique, so we can use the to-do to ID for that. And then in the table, so we're making a table row, and the first cell is going to be the to-do.description. The next one is going to be this edit to-do. Okay, so that's going to be this other component where to-do equals this to-do. So we're going to send this to-do information. Not only are we going to display use the ID in the description right here, if we need to click this edit button, because this edit component is actually this button, I believe. Okay, so we're going to send that information along to the button, and we'll see what that means in a minute. So that's that one, and then here we have the second button, which is the delete button. Button danger just was what makes it red. When we click on it, we're going to run this delete to do, and we're going to send. This is sending which to do are we deleting? It's the ID that has the to do that has this ID, right? So where is this delete to do coming from? That's what was up here. Okay. The delete to do function, again, it's asynchronous, so we gotta wait. So we down here, like I said, we're sending it the ID, right? So that's this up here. It's going to take an ID. We're going to send it an ID. Delete to do is going to be whatever is sent back from this call here. Again, it's asynchronous. We need to wait. We're going to fetch. In this case, we are going to tell it what method it is. So it's not just a get. We're telling it it's a delete method. And in our back end, we had the delete method to do-dos. Remember we were talking about having the ID from the URL. That's exactly what this is. Similar on the back end, it has that colon ID. That's the syntax there. In React, it's it's a little different. These are the backticks. So this is a string literal, and when you do you can use variables inside a string literal with this format with the $sign and the curly braces. Okay. So what that does is set to do's is also, besides deleting it from the back end, the set to do's is the use state here. It's going to filter out to do's where for each to do find to do equals does not equal the ID. So it's going to give us back all the ones that don't have this ID. In other words, this one's gone now, so we don't want to see it anymore, right? Because if we didn't do this and update the state here, we would click delete, and it would happen on the back end, and we wouldn't see anything happen on the front end until we refreshed. But if we do this, it's saying, well, you don't have to refresh. I know what you just did. I'm just going to filter that one out of the page here, okay? So that was the reason to do that. Is this wouldn't cause the page to re-render. It would send it to the database and it would delete it, but it wouldn't make the page re-render. If we update the state, whenever you update the state, the page will re-render. So it'll do that without us having to refresh. So what else was going on back down here? So that's that. So the only thing we need to look at in here was, what did we see? We saw the edit to do component right here. So let's take a look at that. So when we go to edit to do, what happens? It gives us a modal. Again, this was straight from Bootstrap. You can see when we do this edit to do, it has this data from here, record videos. It already knows this is what we're going to try to edit, right? So let's take a look how that works. Where we edit to do, and we're sending it which to do. In this case, the to do, it's the whole to do, which has the ID and the description. So let's see what the edit to do looks like. So this is basically that modal. So these are, what's going on here? So we have a use state again, where we have the description and how to change the description, right? So the state is just, it's just the one to do this time, because that's all that's involved in this. This to do is what's coming in, what we sent to it. So this is like a prop, right? And so it's destructured. Instead of having to say this dot props dot to do, if you do it with the destructuring, you just call it to do. Okay, so let's skip this for a second. We're going to come back to, this is the actual functionality of what happens when we click the button. But first, let's take a look at the page itself. So it's it has a button, or I should say not the page, the modal, right? It has a button. It has two buttons, an edit button and a close button, right? So this is the edit button. The button, type of button, button warning, which gives it the yellow color. Again, this is straight out of the Bootstrap copying. The text in the button is edit. Data target, again, this is still from the Bootstrap stuff, but we're saying it's telling it what ID we need to look at, right? Yeah, because we sent it, because we don't want to edit the wrong one. We need to know which one it is. It's the to do with this ID. Okay. Again, this is going to be, again, with this, but let's come back to this for a second. First, let's just look at the modal itself. ID, okay, on click, what happens when we click this thing, set description, modal body, modal footer. Okay, so this is all the basic stuff that's in your, like I say, it was copied straight out of the W3 schools. So it has the, I'm going to work my way up from the bottom here, because I'm at the bottom here. It has the close button, dismiss modal. Okay, on click, we're going to set the description, update description. Oh, okay, so this is just the state of this thing right now, is record videos, right? So this is just letting us do the update description, set description, all or I should say, this set description is part of this use state back here, right? So we know right now, this is just so we can, what's the word? It's when the form is controlled, a controlled form, right? So as we can type in that, it changes. So that's all that's doing right there. So then this is, all right, so we have the data that's in the state, or which is what's in that form field. And when we click, it's going to take this event data and use it in this update description, right? Which is back up here. So here's the update description. It's an event, the click, right? So you need to tell it it's going to be using data from the event. So prevent default, usually when you send a form or click send on the form or submit, it wants to reload the page. We don't want it to do that. So we're going to prevent that default. All right. Const body equals the description. We're getting that description from the state, right? Here's the description. That's the description that they're using. Okay, then const response equals await this fetch call. It's a put command, right? So remember in our backend, the put was the one we used to edit, right? We need to send it data, and in this case, since it's coming from the front end, we have to tell it what to expect. It's JSON data, and we need it to be not just a string. I mean, we need to tell it that it's, it's going to be a string, right? Not JSON. Because when the other way around, we were getting JSON. Here we were sending the data the other. It's like the opposite way. So again, in the back end, the put to this URL plus this ID tells it which one to edit. All right. So, and then what's next? So this is, remember before we said that with the delete one, it would send it but not update the front end. It would do the thing on the back end. Same sort of problem here. So this window location is saying, here, go to this URL, which is basically back to the beginning. So it knows that it should refresh. I think that's basically it for that thing. I didn't actually cover was inputting the to-do in the first place. So let's find that one. Here's the input to do. Again, we're using the use state description. As far as the app knows, these descriptions are separate. They're not the same, but that's because it's each component has its own state. So you don't need to give it a unique name between. You don't have to say input description or edit description because they're not talking to each other in that way. Okay, so here's just the input form. In other words, this area from here down to the add button, right? Okay, it's telling it what to do when we submit. We're going to run this on submit function, which we'll come back to look at in a second. This just gives it some styling, some bootstrap styling. Okay, the button success is what makes it green, and that's the text that's inside the button. It's saying, okay, on change, so when this is just the whole controlled form thing again and letting us be able to type into the form. So what we want to do is take that value that's in there when we submit, right? We're going to go to on submit form. We're going to submit the form. Again, it's the prevent default. We don't want it to refresh the page just yet. We want it to do this first. We're going to take the description from the state. I'm going to call it body. And we're going to, okay, so this is a post request when you add something to the database. Again, we need to tell it what type of things it's expecting and what form it's coming in. And again, this is going to do it to the database, but it's not necessarily going to make it refresh, so we have to do this thing to make the page refresh again. And I think that is it. So let's just try one just to see. I also need to clean my shed. Hit enter, and it goes. There it is, clean the shed. If I want to edit that, my house is dirty. I need to clean I forgot, it's not my shed. My wife told me to clean. It was the kitchen. So we're going to edit. There we go. Now it should clean the shed, is now clean the kitchen. And that's it. And you know what? I finished cleaning the basement yesterday, so we can get rid of that. Just like that, it's gone. So you can see the ones that might take a second to make a database call, take a little longer. But that's it. This is my first one of these code walkthroughs I've done. I hope somebody looks at this and finds it helpful or gets a little insight into me saying, letting you know that I know what this stuff is doing. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like you're running through these tutorials and you're practicing syntax more than you're practicing actually understanding this stuff. So again, this is partially just for me to be able to go through it and say, yes, I understand what all these things do. And I suggest you try this yourself if you haven't done something like this before. It really reinforces for yourself. You can find your weaknesses, because if you go through and you're like, well, wait a minute, what does this do? I don't remember this. then it means you got your app working from your tutorial, but do you really know what you're doing? You see a lot of that when people say when they're in that what we call the tutorial hell. People say, like, I did all these tutorials, but I stare at the blank page and I have no idea what to do. That means you were just practicing syntax and not practicing concepts. So this is a good way to make sure that you actually know the concepts and not just syntax. Okay, so this video is getting kind of long, up to almost 40 minutes, so got to stop it here before it gets out of control. All right, thank you for watching. We'll see you another time.